Are there enough spots at these universities that you need out for engineers? Because what I also heard is that there's just not enough. They only take a limited number of engineering student candidates every year, and there's even if more people or more students, more kids want to go that route, they're not going to just easily find a college that they can go to.
It seems like there's enough space. We have some ACEC Oregon board members who are helping the universities with their funding challenges and their additional challenges through the legislative process to make sure that the colleges of engineering are growing and are able to support the needs in the state in terms of additional engineers.
And how frequently you guys do that exercise? Is it only you, Consors, doing that, or initiative of going down to high schools and trying to recruit students from high school level to go that route or path, or is it pretty much Oregon wide?
I think it's Oregon wide. I think the ACEC Oregon membership recognizes this is one of ACEC Oregon's priorities is to increase the number of engineers and, frankly, the number of land surveyors. The land surveyor industry is probably even worse off than the engineering industry. And so they're really looking at both. And a few of our board members are working again at the legislative level here in the state, but also talking to firms about sponsoring. We have a scholarship opportunities for students that pay them, $2,500 a year, some of them $5,000 a year to go to school. And so it feels like for folks who might think that college is unachievable and who are strong in math and science, that there are lots of opportunities if they're looking to find a way to get in there. We just need to keep getting our fingers down at the high school level and make math, and engineering fun, especially for young girls. I will say, having been a 12 to 13-year-old girl, math is super fun until you reach a certain age, and then it's like not so exciting in school to be so good at math, right?
What is the mix today? I mean, speaking of that, what is the mix today between genders going to engineering schools or engineers in general?
If I had to guess, it's probably 30% female and 70% male. It's I at UC Davis, my graduating class for civil engineering, there was 3 of us. I dare say I see a lot of younger women studying engineering today. So that's good. They're seeing it as a good career move and some options. I think as an industry, we need to continue to do better with supporting women, showing young women that there are a lot of paths in engineering available to them, and we can support them at the various stages in their life, and where they can actually have a career in engineering all the way through, even if they take some time off to have some kids or some time off to help an elderly parent or whatever that looks like for them. That there are a lot of companies who retention is a very, very major initiative, and it is for us too. And so I'm hoping that helps make it look, more fun, even for females to say, I should go do that. I can do a lot.
What kept us from having the numbers up over the years? Females, males, doesn't matter, but engineering candidates in general. Why have we reached the point where we have to go down to schools and encourage younger generations to go that route?
I think engineering, I think a lot of us, well, it's a good question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for that. With the tech industry booming, having gone through its booms, I think probably folks who are studying engineering may look at computer science and say, there's a lot of money that way. Civil engineering, when I talk to civil engineering candidates who are looking for a job with us, and we always ask, why civil engineering? What makes you interested in that? It's never about, I want to make a bunch of money. It's never about that totally entrepreneurial spirit. It's more about wanting to serve their community, wanting to see improvements in their community and helping their family. It's kind of an altruistic sort of thing. So I think not everybody is drawn to that. And,
So there's a major financial aspect to it,
I think so.
with engineers not being paid enough.
Um, I think in the grand scheme of things, civil engineers probably aren't the highest paid. If you looked at the engineering industry, I'm sure we aren't. But what I have found is that money is number three. People are drawn to, people take a job for what they're going to do, who they're going to do it with, and then money is number three. And I have found that to be universally true. I think people, they want to do what they want to do. And if they enjoy designing traffic signals or find roundabouts super fascinating, they're going to find a job in that industry, or building things, right? Construction is a huge industry, and that's what they're going to study. But when you're young, you're always looking at money, and maybe your
That's the
parents
problem. That's the problem, because I remember back in the days when I was considering engineering, it was such a high state. Like, going to engineering, that's fantastic. Engineers and doctors, this is the maximum, this is the highest that you can get pretty much on the chain of, doing something great, learning something fantastic, having a beautiful position. I think it became less and less lucrative over the years for new generations, because it's probably not as fast to grow in an engineering career as it is in other industries. And then it's just, the industry doesn't pay as much as other industries compared to other industries. Technology is one of them. The tech industry is one of many. It doesn't pay you as much. Engineers used to be probably second highest paid after doctors back in the days. I don't think it's the case right now. And the question remains, why? Why can't engineering companies pay premium, top dollar for their engineers who are creating outstanding projects and deliverables?
Well, I think, at least in my industry where we do so much work for public agencies, they absolutely have fixed budgets, and, our costs are rising without a doubt due to inflation. So I think something's going to come to a head. I think there's plenty in our industry who are funding projects who would say consultants seem to be very well paid, and that's their perspective. But what I also watch is the dichotomy between the private sector, like us, and the public sector. And I watched it in California when I worked for Caltrans, and Caltrans engineers have a union. They are unionized, and they're constantly doing studies about what private sector is making. So I watched, here's the private sector, and then here's Caltrans, and then here's the private sector, and here's Caltrans, and it's like a leapfrog. And I watched the same thing up here as well. The public agencies who want to attract good talent have to pay more, and then we sort of pay more, and it's the same thing. And I think one of the dynamics actually is that public agencies used to be able to pay less because they had fantastic retirement benefits. And now I think, the pensions available for somebody starting today with a large public agency who has a pension program, it's just not the same anymore. And so they can no longer really, it's just not the same. So they have to compete on salary instead of, well, you're going to earn a little bit less now, but by the time you retire, you're going to be able to retire sooner, and you're going to have a fantastic retirement benefits. I watched them degrade significantly in California at Caltrans, and they have degraded significantly up here, right? They're all in the red right now. So I think we have this leapfrogging salary, but it doesn't mean we're getting a whole lot more value. It means we're responding to inflation.
Probably need a little bit more marketing on that front, just to market more the work that we do and how we can attract more and more candidates and skills.
Yes.
How are we doing on the public transportation? My personal opinion, I think we're doing horrible. I mean, many industries have leapfrogged forward because of the technology boom and things that we could do in the past couple of decades now. But then you look at public transportation, it's still stuck where it was literally 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like, nothing advanced over there, right? Private, yes. We have the Ubers and the likes all over the place. But then you look at the public transportation in general, and it's like we're still using the same old buses running on the same old schedules. There's really nothing advancing in that sense, right? And people just avoid them for some reason. They don't feel safe going in many of times, and they just don't feel comfortable, riding with these buses or whatever. What's your take on it? Where do you think we are?
I think the challenge there is that those systems are publicly funded and, similar to the Interstate Bridge project that I talked about, when you decide you want to do something, you're looking for billions, you're looking for the B's, not just the M's, not just the millions. And the time it takes to amass that amount of money and then actually build anything, you're sort of like that technology sort of passed you by. And so I feel like we're always one or two steps behind. It's like saving, you need to save up money for an iPhone, but by the time you can afford something, you're buying the iPhone 5, right? And now it's the iPhone, whatever, 14 or 15. I think it's the same dynamic. And every time we do heavily invest, by the time we actually get the system built, the world has moved on to something greater. I think it's an incredible challenge. And the safety thing, especially up here and in the city of Portland, is absolutely a factor. My own family member moved out of downtown city of Portland because they didn't feel safe using the public transportation system and moved out into the suburbs. And that certainly does not help because, if you don't have ridership, you're not collecting the fares and the public transportation systems typically need tax dollars to remain whole in any circumstance, but having no riders is just moving backwards in a spectacular fashion. So that's an incredible challenge.
And it continues to be. Here's an interesting question for you. Tomorrow morning, you wake up to the news being named the Department of Transportation. You're the minister, right? You're named for the Department of Transportation. You're running the Department of Transportation nationwide. What are the top 3 priorities that you would work on and the top 3 problems that you would immediately engage on?
Oh my goodness, boy, that's a loaded question. I think number one, this country runs on commerce. Commerce is our jobs, our goods, and the Department of Transportation should be focused on moving people and goods across this country. And so protecting our infrastructure and enhancing our infrastructure, I think, should be the number one priority. And despite if you like or appreciate the advancement of electric cars and those kinds of things, I just think our country relies on, focusing on moving people and goods. That's what we are. And then freedoms as well. So I would focus on really enhancing our infrastructure and just making it easier for people and for goods to move around. That's probably my number one focus. You said I could have 3, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to even come up with 3. I think the other one would be environmental issues in terms of, certainly protecting the environment that we have. Very important. But I think in terms of trying to improve our country, we sometimes trip over ourselves over small factors. And I think environmental resource agencies who are tasked with issuing permits sometimes take a very hard line without looking at the greater good. And I don't mean to say that we should be, ruining wetlands or doing anything like that. But I think I would focus on how to bring those two sides together, because one side feels like you're just in my way, and the other side feels like, yeah, you're just trying to wipe out all the goodness we have in this country, and kind of bring those together. Those are probably the 2 things I would focus on. And then, down at the high school and college level is finding more engineers and making engineering a more exciting and fun job to have, and prospects and that kind of thing.
And the most pressing problem that you would immediately try to resolve day one would be?
Probably the condition of our roads and bridges. I think number one, it happens at least once a year where the front page of the paper is a bridge failing or, something falling. a nice big slide where, the roadway drops down into the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean or a big river. And so it would be hardening our infrastructure, is I think what I would focus my energy on.
And do you think we really need a lot of funds for these to happen, or is it just because we're not giving enough attention?
Well, I think we do need a lot of funds, and I think it's because we aren't focusing enough energy, enough brain energy on hardening our infrastructure and what that means. I mean, we're all just kind of, one earthquake away from major failures if we aren't looking to strengthen our bridges, strengthen our roads. We face the same thing at home, right? We have to cut down the grass so it doesn't, forest fires don't come and wipe out our home. It's the same sort of thing. I think we have to be protecting the assets that we have. And I think we're not paying as much attention to that as we should, again, by virtue of the fact that you see failures across this country that are because of lack of funds going into maintenance and strengthening and hardening our infrastructure.
On a scale of 1 to 10, being a professional with 35 years plus of experience, how satisfied are you with people in charge of our transportation right now, nationwide and local to the state of Oregon?
Probably about a 6. I think people are. I think people and I worked in the public sector for a long time, so I understand. You are handed a very large list of priorities and about this much money. You're tasked with feeding your city Thanksgiving dinner, and somebody handed you $100 bill. I mean, I think it's that. I think the problem is that big, and so I think they're doing the best they can with what they have, and they are sort of hamstrung to think outside the box is what I think happens, because I saw that in my own career. I felt that. That's why I stopped working for Caltrans. It wasn't any fun anymore because people were just tying your hands behind your back. And you sort of lose your creativity into the bureaucracy.
Absolutely. So 6 it is.
6 it is. I love all my clients out there, by the way, if any of them are watching.
What do you love most about being a woman engineer?
For whatever reason, people think that female engineers are just sort of, stronger, bigger, badder. And maybe it's because there's a perception that we had to try harder to get where we are. And I think to some respects I did, right? Nobody handed it to me. I had to stand up in class. The thing that I like most is the fact that I have a voice and I can make a difference. I know I'm making a difference in my community and in other communities and across the state. And that just is so incredibly rewarding.
Next quick question. What's your favorite engineering project?
I have 3. I look back in my career and I would say I have 3 projects that framed my career for different reasons. But my favorite was probably replacing the Noyo River Bridge in Fort Bragg on Highway 1 in California. And the reason I say that is because I truly sat down with a bridge engineer at Caltrans. This is while I was still at Caltrans. We truly mapped out that project on the back of a napkin. That was very interesting. And I learned from that project that the few naysayers, very strong naysayers locally, one in particular, called back to Federal Highways, didn't want the project, was starting to call me at home, didn't want the project, went to the California Transportation Commission and the Coastal Commission, didn't want the project. And I learned that if you are a public servant and a public project manager, if you know your project and know the reasons and you just stay on message about this is the right project for this community and here's why, you will garner support. So I learned about just honesty, integrity, and the need for somebody to stand up for a community that really needed a new bridge. That bridge was going to fail. It was just a matter of time. And the detour was 100 miles. And I learned to get out there and beat the bushes and be that community's advocate, even to the point where I did a weekly radio call-in talk show, which, if you can imagine, for a public sector engineer, that's a little scary. That's pretty
That's very
daunting.
interesting. All right.
But I garnered support for that project, and that community rallied behind me and that project, and that taught me to do the right thing, be a good engineer, have good reasons for your project, and don't be afraid to be out there talking about the necessity. Don't be kowtowed by naysayers. It's find your voice, do the right thing, and make it happen.
Very impressive. And what is the most impressive engineering project ever? We're not talking about your work. We're talking like something that you really look at and admire and feel proud that you are an engineer.
Oh, man, that's interesting. Probably something like the St. Louis Arch or the Space Needle, those things that are just big and iconic and really define our country's landscape. Being part, if I were ever a part of that team to do that, I just can't imagine the number of people and the integration and coordination it takes to do that sort of project. I find that incredibly impressive, let alone putting a man on the moon, right? The engineering involved in putting a man on the moon, pretty impressive as well.
And if we talk about historical developments, going back in time, something that really impresses you, how they built what they built back in the days where they have the knowledge and technology that we have today? If you were to name one.
Yeah, you know what? I probably should be able to go back to like really ancient times and talk about something, but honestly, the most impressive to me is Disneyland in California, and what Walt Disney did and how he did it and why he did it. Is just so interesting to me. And talk about engineering on a multiple facet level. There's the rides and the things, but he almost was like the original "if you build it, they will come" kind of thing. And I've watched a lot of history of Disneyland, and that fascinates me. Just what he accomplished in many different engineering types and what it took to do that.
Was he an engineer?
No, I don't think he was an engineer. I think he was
Wow.
just a forward thinker.
I
He
should tell
wanted
you,
to
that's
do
a
something
very,
fun.
that's a very interesting answer. A very, very interesting answer. People tend to go back and talk about, landmarks, around the globe, but they rarely come down to a theme park like the one that you named, given when it was done and how futuristic it was. Future-proof, in other words. All right, now I have a last question for you. Are any of your kids going to the engineering school, or have gone to?
No, dang them. My daughter was never destined to be an engineer. She was very good at computer science, but she found her passion in music, and there's a lot in common. Music and engineering, music and math. And so she is finding her
100%.
way as an orchestra teacher. My son was going to study engineering, but now he is in the automobile industry and is fixing up old Volkswagen vans. In fact, he's part of a new venture where they are going to start taking the 1970s Beetles and vans and start to put electrical engines in them, electric motors.
Wow.
So I found that to be just very fascinating.
Very innovative, for sure.
Yes, but you have to recognize my husband is a metal artist, and so my kids they see both sides of the brain, and they both just found their way, and they're both successful in their own way, and it's okay. They're not an engineer.
Very interesting mix indeed. So I wish them all the luck for the future endeavors, and I gotta thank you, Karen, for all the time, and this chat has been really, really phenomenal, very exciting and interesting. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me. I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Absolutely.